Hey guys, and welcome to the third part of this 5-part breakdown of the sun salutations. Be sure to follow me on Instagram so you can get the rest of the parts. Enjoy the class. If we look at sun salutation B, the two new positions are going to be Utkatasana, the chair pose, Virabhadrasana, the warrior pose. Okay, so the main limitation for Utkatasana is the ankles, okay? And this means that you need to take into consideration your own unique body and your ankle mobility and not try to copy, for example, your teacher. Or like, for example, if you try to copy me, then your Utkatasana may not reach its full potential because I don't have great ankle mobility. So if I bend my knees go this far forward. Okay, so my Utkatasana ends up looking something like this. Whereas someone else who has better ankle mobility could take their knees forward like this and be able to get their hips way lower to the floor like this and then bring their arms up. Okay, so if you have the ankles for it, then you take the hips, the knees forward and the hips lower. Like if I could, I would do Utkatasana much more like this. Okay? A much lower position, but I don't have that range, so I have to stay here. The other option is to do it the way that you would see maybe in a vinyasa class, which is not to take the hands up to the ceiling, but just to keep the hands on a more 45-degree angle, and then think as if you're sitting in a chair. So stop not letting the knees go forward, keeping the knees more or less over the midfoot and sitting the hips back like this and bringing the thighs towards parallel, and then the arms at this kind of 45-degree angle. Okay? And then if you're doing that option, which is quite different from the Ashtanga way, but it's still a good variation, then you probably wouldn't bring the hands together and look to the thumbs. Okay? It's because it becomes quite awkward to do it here. You would keep the arms shoulder width apart and just keep the neck in neutral like this. One happy medium between those two variations, which is something that I sometimes use, is I start the movement doing more of this chair pose like this. Bring the hands, touch the floor, start to bring the knees forward. So I'm squatting quite low. But you see, if I bring my arms up here, that's my maximum. I can't bring them to the ceiling. Sometimes I may even just drop my hips all the way to the floor and let my heels lift up. If you don't need to do that, then don't do it. You can keep the heels down like this. Then from there, start to come up to this position and look to the thumbs. Then straighten the legs and fold forward. Okay, so again, this really depends on a lot of things, on your body, your ankles, how deep you can go, how much dorsiflexion you have, and then also on your shoulder flexion, how much shoulder flexion do you have? Okay, so you need to find what works for you. Don't copy your teacher's limitations, okay? If you can do a deeper, bigger range of motion, then go for it. But at the same time, if your teacher has that full range of motion, don't feel bad that you can't do it the way that they do it, okay? So you do what you can do with your own unique body. Okay, so say we've gone from ekam, we dwe, exhale, forward. And as you go forward, you could do it with straight legs, or you could continue to keep the knees bent and just straighten them at the end. Inhale, lift the head and chest, pull the shoulders to the hips, either hands flat, if that's available, or you come up fingertips to get more movement of the spine. Then you're going to step or jump back, a good high plank. lower down, going through your upward dog, downward dog, and then now we look at Virabhadrasana. Okay, so you're going to step that right foot forward, turn that left foot flat. Okay, traditionally that all comes on an inhalation, stepping forward, taking the arms up. But you may need to break it down into extra breaths, which is fine. Okay, so what I want to point out with Virabhadrasana, which is very similar to Utkatasana, the main limitation is going to be the ankles. Okay, so I'll explain what I mean. So if I'm here facing the camera, my hips are square. Okay, now I turn that foot out on a 45-degree angle. That's also going to bring my hip out like this. Okay? If I don't have good ankle mobility, I'm going to have to turn that foot out even more, which is going to make that hip turn out even more. If I have very good ankle mobility, dorsiflexion, I might be able to almost keep the foot pointing straight, which will mean that I can turn my hip more. Okay? There is also a stretch on the hip flexor, but most of this movement is actually to do with the ankle, dorsiflexion, the range of motion available. And so if I have my legs straight, I'm able to square off more. But as I start to bend that knee, that's going to become more difficult to keep square, okay? So the rotation needs to come more from the chest. If you want it to come from the hip, then you're going to have to lift the heel, see? So if I do the other side like this, so if I want to square that hip to the front, then that back heel is going to have to lift off the floor, which is why in vinyasa classes often this variation is used. Okay, so that's what you need to consider also, is the ankle mobility is going to affect how much rotation you have. Okay, so if I stay with this front leg less bent, then it's going to be easier for me to turn the chest. The more I bend forward, the more this hip is going to be pulled back. Okay? The other thing also is not just dorsiflexion, but you need a lot of inversion. Remember, that's turning the sole of the foot up toward the ceiling. Otherwise, the foot may end up doing this, which is fine also if that's the way your foot works. Okay? So one option also here is you put a wedge under that heel so you can ground down through that heel. Or you allow that heel to lift up. One also point to remember is that this is supposed to be a warrior position. So if your legs are too far apart like this, then you can't really move. Whereas if you find that right point like this, then you can shift your weight. Okay? So imagine like a warrior needing to go into battle, they need to be able to move. If the feet are too wide apart, then you're going to be stuck. Okay, so you need to be a little bit loose and flexible like this, okay? But at the same time strong. Okay, so here we are. What I like to also do is not be on a tightrope like this. So I'm not lining up the heel with the center of the foot, but actually be a little bit wider like this, okay? So this gives me a bit more freedom, range of motion, okay? The knee can go over the heel, can go over the midfoot. Sometimes you see it go over the toes, which is also totally fine, as long as you're being strong in this position and not collapsing into the position. Arm position, so as you come up, arms come up, and same as your acum. You can use a little bit of extension if you like that, or you could use a little bit of tucking under if you prefer that. Okay, there's no real right or wrong. With the neck, again, I think about stretching the throat. It's like a gesture of surrender. Some people like to take the head all the way back, but this is not going to work for everyone. Okay, so We've got our Virabhadrasana, and what I also like to do is as I come out of it, then I lift the heel so I get that hip flexor stretch as I go down and step back and lower down. Okay, so there's a lot of information. I hope you can revisit this class over and over so you start to understand some of the details, and we're going to continue to progress all these details and build a solid foundation and start to add layers of complexity so that you can bring your practice up to the level that is going to be fulfilling and rewarding for you. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed the class. Be sure to follow me on Instagram so you can receive the rest of the parts. And if this is something that you'd like to dive deeper into, then check out the link in the description below to join my online membership, Ashtanga Decoded. Hope to see you there.